This video demonstrates a pre-writing activity for a common form of academic writing, informational writing, the review of the literature. And a review of the literature answers the question, what is the existing conversation among scholars and writers about a certain topic? The topic I chose today was one that my student chose, and it's light pollution. You can note that there are no stars in the sky I drew because there's too much light pollution. So I'm going to discuss 3 articles, and this video helps you see how students use a visual to help them see the relationships among the different articles. So the first article that I'm going to discuss is called Limiting the Impact of Light Pollution on Human Health, Environment, and Stellar Visibility. And the surprising thing about this article is that it's easy to limit light pollution. It's very easy to limit the impact. It's cheap and it's pretty simple. So one thing is you can change the kinds of lights we use, especially for outdoor lighting. It turns out that lights that are heavy in the blue spectrum are bad, and that would be like LED lights, which you think are good because they don't use very much energy, but they're bad for light pollution. The ones that are good are the red spectrum lights, and those are sodium lights, and they're the pinkish ones that you see in the streets or in parking lots in outdoor lighting. Another thing you can do is you can put a little cover on the lights and prevent it from going up into the night sky if they're outdoor lighting. You can focus the light on a specific area, so you can limit it to only on the area that's needed to be lit. You can use only the amount of light that's needed to do the job, not excess light, and you can turn them off when they're not needed. It's pretty easy. The second article is about the economics of global light pollution. So this author talks about the negative effects of light pollution on wildlife. For instance, turtles, when after they're born, they get all confused by light, and they sometimes don't go into the ocean. There's negative impacts on health, certainly on astronomy for being able to see the night sky, and there's just a ton of wasted energy. So I'm drawing a trash can right here, in case you didn't know what that was, and right there, that's the smell of wasted energy. And it's $7 billion in waste. And if you think about the first article again, this is really unnecessary waste. The third article I read was really interesting because it wasn't, although it was published in a scientific journal, it was about like the night sky as a cultural asset. And the title of it was On Light Pollution, Passive Pleasures, and the Instrumental Value of Beauty. And you get a flavor of it because it starts with a little quote by Adam Smith that says, "Of all the phenomena of nature, the celestial appearances are, by their greatness, the most universal objects of curiosity of mankind." But the author makes the point that in poetry and art, that the night sky plays a tremendous role, and there are examples all over the place in poetry and Shakespeare and Frost and Blake, and the famous example of Van Gogh's Starry Night, which I have done an exact replica right here. So after making the case of the value of the night sky as a cultural asset, the question that this author comes up with is, if it's so valuable, why are we not doing anything about this problem? Which I thought was a really interesting question. So there's 3 articles, and back again to the question that a lit review asks. What is the existing conversation among scholars and writers about light pollution? And one of the things we realize is actually they're not arguing about whether or not it's a problem. There seems to be, at least in the article so far, there seems to be agreement that it is a problem, and the discussion is about what kind of problem and what we do about it. So to kind of summarize, the first one says, you can do something about light pollution. It's easy. There's these 5 things you can do. So then the second one says, wow, it's really a problem. It costs a ton of money for us. And the third one says, you know, more than money, there's a cultural value to it. So it's really important. So you want to think about, like, if you're going to organize this, what goes first? One way to do it would be pretty traditional. You could say, here's a problem, here's another problem, and here's a solution. That would be a regular organization of a problem solution, and that would be a good way to do it in a lit review. Or you could say, hey, here's a problem that we can solve. It costs us a lot, but and we have documentation of how important it is to us economically and culturally. So why aren't we doing something about it? So you can use that last article as a sort of a conclusion. So here's a possible way you could organize that this visual representation helped us do. First, you have to summarize the topic and why it's important, of concern for everybody. You can talk about the general agreement that it's a problem that you saw. You discuss number 1, and that's that while this is it's agreed upon as a problem, it's also a problem that is easy and pretty cheap to solve. Despite it being cheap to solve, this is a very expensive problem, so it'd be very cost effective if we tried to do something about it. So you could put that one number 2. And then number 3 could be the last one that talks about what an important cultural asset it is. And then the interesting question that the third one raises is, so if we agree this is a problem, why are we doing nothing about it? Now the conclusion for a lot of students is really important, and they've often learned a very dysfunctional way to conclude, which is to repeat the beginning. But if we can help them see that you conclude something that you couldn't get to in another way, like, why aren't we doing something about this? Such a conclusion, why aren't we doing something about it, both follows from the last article and invites the reader to keep thinking deeply about the topic. It's a conclusion that could not have been reached without the discussion of the individual article.